You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Welcome in, everyone, to today's edition of the Royals Rundown Podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jake Milham, joined today by the one and only Jeremy Greco. Jeremy, how we feeling this Thursday?
Oh, it's kind of a Thursday, which means I am very ready for Friday.
Yes, I am as well. And we don't have Royals baseball today, which makes it even weirder, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a good thing we don't have to watch the boys in blue.
We're going to get to this in a little bit, but I leave that series feeling better about the team, and not just because they got a win, but I feel better about the team than I did. So I have some positives. I was really, I think I try to always be positive when we get to the podcast. It's just really easy to be negative about the team right now. I like to look on the bright side because it's more fun, and I'm trying to have fun over here. But I think we were both pretty negative Sunday, and I think it's still justified to be negative. But I've got a few more positives and some negatives.
Okay.
We'll get there. I'll stop talking about it, and we can move on.
Yeah, we do have a lot to talk about in today's episode. We're going to talk about that Baltimore Orioles series. We're going to talk about an article today that came out on RoyalsReview.com that I think a lot of Royals fans can agree with, and it resonates with them right now. But we'll get to that after we talk about the big news from this week. The Royals officially announced what is the next step in the stadium process. Don't worry, folks, it is not contingent upon a public vote this time.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. Your voices do not matter.
That is correct. So the Royals are teaming up with Hallmark Cards to build the next ballpark down at Crown Center with, quote, a promised $3 billion downtown campus of mixed-use development in the surrounding 85 acres. I mean, the Royals were all, of course, all in, all positive on this, calling it innovative, historic, one of a kind. You had so many leaders out there at Crown Center to announce the move, and it was just short of a ticker tape parade we had going on down there, Jeremy. But before we get into the nitty gritty details, what do you think about this move?
I mean, my general response remains pretty similar to what it's been. I think publicly funded stadiums are a scam. I think they represent billionaires stealing from people. I will say that I had this thought proposed to me. I think it was on the Substack Kansas City Stack. They said that baseball stadiums are a public good, a public they're beneficial to the public. And I've spent all day with that thought running through my brain, Jacob. All day I've been thinking about that. And I think there's something to that. So I've started an outline, and we're going to go over most of my points today, if not all of them. I've started an outline for the pros and cons of the new Kansas City Royals Stadium.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the details here, because we did get some renderings. I think the renderings look very nice. They're at Crown Center.
The renderings at this stage are meaningless.
Correct. I do agree. Let's be clear. We've how many different renderings from Populous have we seen over the past few years for what a new Royal Stadium could look like? Like we've seen a lot. They're meant to put something in fans' imagination, and that was accomplished.
What they're putting in my imagination right now, I don't like. What is this fountain in center field? That
you don't like that?
I think that style of fountain is ugly. I think you can do more than just pick the most central spot of the stadium and shoot water straight in the air. Okay? B, you can't put it there. Literally, physically cannot put it there because you got to put the batter's eye there.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
You can't do that. So that's not what it's going to look like.
No, it's not. But like I said, spark the
Can you
imagination. It
imagine?
certainly does that.
Can you imagine if instead of a batter's eye, the new Royal Stadium had a giant fountain, which is not only not like the whole point of a batter's eye is to be a one color flat surface so that there's no visual distractions behind the pitcher as the batter attempts to bat. But now you replace that not only with not a batter's eye, but something that moves and changes color.
Yeah, that would definitely be very distracting, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So what Jeremy said at the start of this is not wrong though about the whole public vote thing. There was a lot of opposition once this got on. I forget what the actual terms for the step, but once I think it was last week where there was some talk about financing and getting to this part.
I've got the gist of the terms.
Okay.
Oh,
What was the gist?
Kansas City approved $600 million. Kansas City's putting $600 million in this. The Missouri state government said they would put in up to half, and I'm hearing that what they're doing now is between 400 and 600 million.
Okay.
The stadium itself is supposed to cost 1.9 billion, and then the development around the stadium is another billion.
Yes.
So that's where you get that 3 billion total. It's conflicting reports between 400 and 600 from the state. It sounds like it's probably going to be 400. I have not heard anything about the county. I'm not anticipating the county actually joining in at this stage because
I
they've
doubt
announced it and the county's done nothing. So I just don't think they're showing up for this, which the stadium's already half paid for. And that's one of my pros and my cons is that, well, at least they're only paying for half. I thought at one point they were going to be paying for 2/3, the government, because if the state did pay half of the 1.9 billion, that would be 1 billion, and then the city plunked in 600k, that would, or 600 million, that would leave only 300 million for the Royals to cover. And that would be much worse than the deal that they ended up getting. I think what the part of the deal that really benefits the Royals here is the sheer volume of land that they're getting control of, because what people were originally talking about with Washington Square Park was going to be like 10 acres around the stadium, and they're getting 85.
So much more. It's
so much more.
Yeah, the
8 times more.
Oh yeah, well, 8.5 times more, some might say. Yeah, there's a lot to be done here, and I think I like that it is, it's close to Union Station, it's close to the World War II Memorial, it's close to Children's Mercy. Like it is not in like downtown proper where it used to be called the Sprint Center. I forget what it's called now. Like it's not down there, right? But it's still very much in downtown Kansas City, what I would consider, and you still get that skyline in the background. So it's gonna, here in about 5 years, it's gonna be a very different look from what you get at Kauffman Stadium.
The renderings they've got, and this is one thing I do like about the renderings that I hope sticks around, is that the home plate pointing towards the outfield. So the part of what you're going to see when you get the behind the plate view of the city that's the Kansas City downtown skyline that you're going to be able to see from there. So that was good decision making, and also whatever they end up doing to the Crown Center, which I guess is going to be renovated and updated and stuff.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they incorporate that. Right now, they just kind of, for the renderings, they kind of copied and pasted it out there into right field is what it looks like. We'll see if that sticks around. Like Jeremy said, don't get married to any renderings out there. No one should ever.
One of my favorite things, Jacob, is that they've explicitly said they're going to demolish the Hallmark headquarters building.
Yeah.
And then the stadium's going to go there. And the last I read, I think this was also on the Kansas City Stack, they've got a lot of good coverage over there. This is where I'm getting a lot of my information from. The reporting is that their reporting is that when they were asked where's the Hallmark headquarters gonna be, they're like, we're figuring that out. Well, you're gonna have to demolish your current headquarters really quick if their Royals are gonna move in 2030.
Well,
So you better figure that out fast. It's like none of these rich business owners. I'm not sure if the owner of Hallmark is a billionaire or not. None of them can plan ahead. What is going on?
very fly by the seat of our pants, I guess. But at the end of the day, I think that Royals fans should be happy with the fact that we can be assured the Royals are not only staying in Missouri, but they are staying in Kansas City proper. There's a lot of folks being naysayers saying, hey, they're gonna leave for Nashville, or hey, they're gonna leave
Never
for
gonna happen.
Charlotte. No, it's not. They're sticking around, folks, and
You move.
I'm
You're
glad
not going
to
to
see
move
that.
to a smaller market, and maybe those are bigger cities, but they're smaller markets because you've got more competition.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the Royals got that feel good part going for them. They put out a video with Denny Matthews voicing it. I think it was absolutely awesome to see that, Denny's been around this franchise forever. And so, hearing him say forever Kansas City, well that does mean something. And now thankfully we can see that they will be in Kansas City for the foreseeable future. Jeremy, anything else to add on the stadium stuff before we move on to the on-field product?
I mean, I've got lots to add, honestly. I'll
Okay,
try and
well,
keep it relatively brief.
hold on. So let me ask you this before you let me try to steer you here.
Okay,
So a part of
you can try.
KCUR's yeah, I know. I'll try, but it's something you're passionate about.
Today, I
So
am the bus.
I'm gonna read this from KCUR, which is the NPR station there in Kansas City. As part of the financing plan the city passed last week, that's what I was talking about earlier, any negotiations that city manager Mario Vasquez has with the team would go to the city council for approval. That means development agreements made with the Royals, like a community benefits agreement, lease agreement, and term sheet, would go to the council for a final vote. Now, I'm curious. Do you think that this will get us a better community benefits agreement than we were proposed last time? Because it seemed like the Royals were just negotiating with private groups.
So last time the Royals were supposed to be negotiating directly with the community, and what the lead of the community in this case was a member of an organization that included a chairman who was a Royals executive. So it ended up, at least with the appearance that this is years ago. So excuse me if
Yeah,
I'm not giving you all the explicit details. I wrote
a few
about it.
years
You
ago
can
now.
find it on Royals Review. Um, it appeared that the Royals were negotiating with themselves, and the final community benefits agreement sheet, which I did look at, essentially promised only that the Royals could pay themselves and call it charity. They had to pay a certain amount to charity, and they would consider themselves a charity. So it promised nothing. Whereas the community benefits agreements that have kind of led the wave on having community benefits agreements, such as the soccer stadium in Nashville, and the basketball stadium, I forget where,
Is that
were
Minnesota?
it might have been. It was some Midwestern state. Um, had things like, in the area that we're going to control in our ballpark village or whatever they were calling it, we're going to have a certain percentage of affordable housing, we're going to have certain minimum wages, we're going to have certain things for grocery costs, et cetera, things that would benefit the community and make it easier to live in those places and work in those places. And so the Royals weren't even off pretending to offer any of that. So to me, it wasn't, even if they had promised to donate to charity, it would not have been a community benefits agreement, because where are the community benefits? I don't feel like we're likely to get a better community benefits agreement, because at this point, the Royals got what they wanted. What's the negotiating leverage?
Yeah, that's fair.
So I think the council, I don't know what the council can do to shut things down. I don't think they actually have any authority to shut things down. I think they're going to get steamrolled at this point.
I hope not. I really hope not.
But
Well,
if we find out that I'm wrong, great, cool. I'm excited. I'd love to learn that there's a really strong community benefits agreement, because like I said, I'm working on an article that's pros and cons. There are pros to this. The stadium is moving downtown. Downtown baseball is good. It's easier to access. Don't talk to me about the parking. You don't know what the parking situation is. No one could look at me in the eye and say, this is what the parking situation is going to be. You could look at me in the eye and tell me what the parking situation currently is, but you have no idea what it's going to be when the stadium is finished. You do not know. You do not know what the traffic's going to do. No one knows. That's part of what they're going to be figuring out over the next few years, is how the parking situation needs to change, how the traffic situation needs to change. No one knows yet. But downtown is good. It's where they're building it. It seems like they're not really going to be relocating people very much, which is this is something I was looking at, because a lot of this has been, we want to revitalize downtown, and I'm like, what is the difference between gentrification and revitalization? Because gentrification is bad, revitalization is good. What's the difference? And the best definition I could come up with is, gentrification is when you kick out all the poor people to make things better, and revitalization is when you let the poor people stay and you make things better. They're not kicking anyone out, other than the Crown Center headquarters, which they can afford to do whatever they want to do. And they're getting paid handsomely for it, and they're happy about it. So it seems like not a lot of people are being moved here. Now, if I find out that I have been misled on this, then, we'll have a different conversation. So that's a revitalization of downtown, putting an anchor tenant down there to let other people build up their businesses around. That's going to be good. That's going to be a positive.
It is.
The industrial neighbors that the Royals had out at the Truman Sports Complex were not benefiting from the Royals being there.
No.
And they won't suffer for the Royals not being there.
No.
So
the Denny's liked it, though. I will say.
Well, the Denny's will still have the industrial employees. I'm sure they'll be fine. I can't imagine there were that many Royals fans showing up at the Denny's before or after the game.
You never know. You never know that. I'm pretty sure the Denny's is burnt down,
80
Jeremy.
days a year. That's one of the things that gets me, is it's 80 days a year, 81 days a year. Like, you're not drawing that much extra foot traffic into the city or to wherever you are. So there are some good things here, and I do think it is a public benefit to have a large stadium. There's lots of things you can do there. We've seen, one of the great things that we saw happen there was you can add voting booths and make it a voting location, and it can be much more accessible and encourage people to show up and vote. Doing your civic duty doesn't always sound cool. I get to go to Kaufman or whatever they name the new stadium, and do my civic duty at the baseball stadium. That I like going to the baseball stadium. I don't care about going to the library or the elementary school or the church, so that's that. There can be public good there. I think there would be more good if the team had to actually pay rent for its usage of the building, but whatever. Now there's one really big negative that we haven't talked about, Jacob.
Okay.
So how they got this thing funded without going to a public vote was by not creating a new tax.
Correct.
And the way they did that is they're going to sell bonds and then levy a special tax against the stadium and the surrounding area. So basically a usage tax, which is how they can make this happen. The problem is, if you look at the Kansas City Stack article, it was the second to last one on the subject, and it actually says the last one for now, and then they announced it, and so they had to write another one. They did some napkin math and were very generous about the amount of spending that could be done, and still came up short of the taxes that could be collected in this district and then spent and then applied to this thing. So if you're short, you know what that means, Jacob? It means you're not collecting new taxes. You're cutting spending other places.
Yeah.
So you know what else is a community benefit? A stadium is a community good thing. You know what else is a good thing? Housing, food, medical care. Those things aren't going to get funding. Buses to get kids to school, public transportation. These things aren't going to get funding. And that sucks. And you also have to remember that as much extra tax revenue, because especially when you're moving in city, the extra tax revenue is coming from the new stadium. You're losing the tax revenue from the old stadium.
True. Very true.
So you're not actually gaining any tax revenue. You're just shifting it. And I promise I will stop here. But this is the thing. That's the biggest thing. The thing that pisses me off the most is the Royals going on and on. This creates 20,000 construction jobs alone. Great. What happens to those construction jobs when you're done building the stadium and the surrounding buildings?
Go away.
They go away. All those people get laid off because there's nothing left to build.
Correct.
Except for, there'll be the usual construction that always happens, but you won't need all of those 20,000 jobs to do that. A lot of those people are going to get laid off.
Yeah, a lot of them are.
So how much you and it's fine to say, well, at least some people are going to have more work for a while. Great. Cool. Don't act like this is some huge benefit. This is a temporary boost at best. And it annoys me when people talk disingenuously in this way.
So I do want to push back there, though, because I do think that I'm trying to think of how to word this correctly because I'm going off the cuff, Jeremy. So we're in a economic climate right now where a lot of people are trying to just get by. Right. And there are going to be 20,000 people who come in here and are employed for a few years. And, some of them might set down roots in Kansas City. Some of them might move on to the next thing. But I do think that, this helps those people, even if it is just for a short time. And, I am glad that they at least said it's construction jobs, right? They're not trying to estimate like, okay, we're going to have X amount of restaurants and that's going to create X amount of jobs per restaurant. And they're always going to be fully staffed and they're all always going to be open and things like that. We're going to lump that into the jobs number. We're not.
I get. Sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, first of all, you're right, but that's not the way that they're presenting it. My problem is in how they're presenting it, which is 20,000 new jobs. Well, it's not really 20,000 new jobs. It's 20,000 new temporary jobs.
Gotcha. From my understanding, they were starting it off with they were construction straight up. So I hadn't, but I must be misunderstanding.
But I think when you say construction jobs alone, people hear 20,000 new jobs. They don't hear, well, those are temporary jobs because construction is temporary.
Okay.
I feel like it's technically correct, but it's disingenuously described. And the second point is something I hadn't thought of that you raised. Not everybody who takes those 20,000 jobs is going to be from Kansas City. You're going to have people coming from other areas to take those jobs. So if you're looking around going, well, everybody in Kansas City is going to be employed now. No, they're not. You're going to have extra people around the area. And it's nothing wrong with extra people, but just remember, if you've got 20,000 neighbors who are not employed, you're not going to suddenly have 20,000 neighbors who are employed. You're going to have 15,000 neighbors who are employed, 5,000 who are still unemployed, and then 5,000 new people moved into the area. So again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, Jacob, but the way that they're talking about it is I'm going to use this word again, disingenuous.
Put that on the Scrabble board tonight.
I mean,
that'd be a big score.
It's a good Scrabble word. I mean, it's not actually a good Scrabble word because it doesn't have any Q's or X's or Z's in it. But...
we got to get by with what we got here. If y'all have thoughts on the stadium process, what the renderings look like, what the details are, please, we would love to hear them. I appreciate everyone reaching out in the Spotify comments, especially Jeremy's been doing a great job of responding to folks in there, but some really long thought out responses there to our episodes.
Yeah, I still can't get into the Spotify creators view, so I just have the latest podcast pulled up, and I'm trying to reply when I see people posting. So
there you go. Thank you.
If you're commenting on older episodes, I'm not going to see you because I don't have the creator dashboard anymore. It used to show us just the most recent comments, regardless of where. I don't know why it's not working. I've given up on trying. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
You
same
can
here.
still reach out to me on Blue Sky and by email, and on Royals Review. If you hit us anywhere and you want to talk to me directly, Jacob will tell you. We actually had my email is on my Royals Review profile, but
Really?
somebody couldn't find it, and they emailed Max to talk to me about one of the recaps I'd written recently, and so Max forwarded it to me. Like,
There you go.
we know each other. We're willing to figure this stuff out, and I was able to respond to that person. I'm
Perfect.
happy to do so. I love to talk baseball. That's why I'm here. So you want to talk some baseball? Let's talk some baseball, baby. If you want to tell me I'm really smart and you appreciate me injecting my political views into everything I do, I would love to hear that too.
Yeah, we would love to hear that because we hear a lot of the opposite around here. Trust me.
I'm not opposed to an echo chamber, Jacob.
All right. Hey, speaking of that baseball stuff, we are going to take our first break of the episode. And coming up, we'll talk about the Baltimore Orioles series, what went right and what went wrong, and look at the latest from Max on RoyalsReview.com. Stay tuned.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in house plants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
All right, y'all. We are back here on the Royals Rundown podcast presented by Royals Review. All right. So, Jeremy, good news. Royals finally broke that losing streak.
They
It
did.
ended at 8 games. Bad news, they still lost 2 out of 3 to the Baltimore Orioles, and they have
Well,
lost 9 of their last 10 games.
I thought the bad news was that everyone has a mustache now.
Hey, rude. Rude. What do you got against mustaches?
Noah Cameron looks like a completely different person.
He does. Ken was over here watching the game with me the other night, and they were like, "Is that Vinny? Doesn't he usually have a beard?"
Yeah. Even Bobby, the only
Yeah.
person who didn't do anything to his beard, there were 2 people. Kyle Isbell didn't do anything to his beard, which, well, we know Kyle Isbell doesn't like to adjust his body to help his team out. And Jack Caglione, and I gotta tell you, folks, Jack, he looks so good, and he's hitting anyway. We're not messing with Jack.
Nope.
When his hat
Right.
comes off, Jacob, I have to stop for a moment and just watch the hair.
Yeah. You know, it was Jonathan India's hair last year. Now it's Jack Caglione's.
I never liked Jonathan India's hair. I found it interesting, but I didn't like it. Jack Caglione, I'm not into dudes, okay? Let me be very clear. I am not into dudes, but his hair makes me wonder.
Oh my gosh, Jeremy.
Is and the way it flows,
I believe the word you're looking for is coiffed. Very suave.
sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
Anyways, we're not here to talk about hair, but that was a focal point, especially with the mustaches, because I think Michael Massey was talking about it a little bit on Vern's postgame show after that walk-off win. Looking at the greater scheme of things, as they sit at home on an off day, hopefully they're getting some swings in somewhere. The Royals are 8-17 as of today. You know, that's not a good mark to be at through the first 25 games of the season. And, there have been some bad Royals teams, and this is the 14th time in franchise history that they've been 8-17 or worse in the first 25 games. They've won one series, they've lost 6 of their last 8. Like there's not a lot of good things to take away from this Orioles series, I would say. I looked at Michael Wacha a little bit closer. I'll talk about him in a moment. But you said you had some positives. What are some positives that you're seeing from this Orioles series?
Yeah, we'll start with the positives because it's pretty basic. They scored some dang runs, Jacob.
They did.
Now, we could say that on Monday night, at least 2 of those 5 runs were gifted by Rob Manfred.
Yep.
Very kind of him. And
Thank
we
you.
could say that, boy, they lost yesterday on Wednesday, but they won. They won their first game Tuesday that they had trailed. They had all season, they had not won a game that they trailed in. All of the previous 7 wins had been games that they had never trailed. So that showed the offense. It showed some resiliency, and they had 5 or more runs in all 3 games of the series, Jacob. And the pitchers weren't slouches.
No, they weren't.
So
our starting pitching
that's
was.
my positive is the offense is starting to wake up, especially Vinny had some really good at bats. Carter had some really good at bats. Michael is still killing it, man.
Yeah. Kyle Isbell broke out of his slump.
Yeah, Michael Massey showed us a few really good at bats. Bobby Witt hit the ball hard. He could still do better. Jack Caglione had one good game. He was the only run for a while in that Monday night game. Oh, that home run was pretty, right?
It was.
It was. Home run. Need more of those.
Yes.
But
please.
Lane Thomas even is kind of taking over the left field job, at least temporarily.
Yeah. So, Isaac Collins not really latching onto it.
Yeah, and he's also apparently the worst defender in baseball in the field right now.
Apparently so.
So yeah, there's the only guy that I'm really worried about still right now is Sal, who's still bad in cleanup, and that I think leads us to what the kind of the main topic of the team on the field is.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in one more second. I think that if there is a positive from the first 25 games of this season, most of them have been decided by 2 runs or fewer for the Royals, and especially during their losing streak, that was the case. And unfortunately, they've just lost more games than they've won in those close situations. But knowing that they're not getting consistently blown out game in and game out is partially what brings us to Max's article today. Which I thought would have spurred a lot more conversation on the website. I think a lot of fans are kind of tuning out right now, but I think that this is a must read. If you are listening to this podcast, this article is a must read on RoyalsReview.com. Wouldn't you agree, Jeremy?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It took some of the thoughts I had and really expanded them and made me realize, oh no, these are not. Like, I can point to a handful of isolated incidents that really bug me. But Max was like, no, there's actually a lot of this going on here, unfortunately.
Yeah, so this all boils down to that the Royals aren't just bad right now, but they look unprepared. Okay, yeah. And it makes it feel like a coaching problem rather than a talent problem. If you listen to this podcast for a while, you've heard me say the phrase talent deficient or a talent deficiency, because that is, like the 2023 Royals were a great example of that, right? There was only so much coaching could do with that squad. But right now, this is a decent roster and the results are piss poor. So it all goes down to the real issues, the failure to just execute basic winning habits. Jeremy, those are kind of like my 10,000 foot takeaways from this article. Do you concur?
Yeah, listen, I think you and I have both been pretty staunch Q defenders. I've even come up with tinfoil hat theories to defend Alex Zumwalt. We've endlessly praised the pitching coaching.
Yes, we have.
And looking at the team right now, man, it across the board seems deficient. To me, my breaking point when I was like, man, okay, the team, first of all, the team looks like they're pressing,
Yes, they
and
do.
that's natural, but that is the one thing the coaches need to be able to fix. They need to be able to get you out of your head. If the coaches can't do that, they're not doing their jobs. Um, And
Leader
then
of men.
we saw some really sloppy plays starting Saturday, and we talked about this a little, where Q got ejected in the first inning, and then we had a collision in the outfield. And then Sunday, I had stopped watching at this point, so I didn't even know this had happened until I read Max's article. Really, was the drop pop up in left field, where which Terrence Long and somebody else from the early aughts Royals just smacks of that. And honestly, this whole thing does. The fact that the Royals weren't playing doubles defense, was that the first Orioles game? Weren't
I
playing
believe so.
weren't defending Vinny wasn't defending the line, and the ball went down the right field line that could have, if he'd been there, it would have been an out, and instead it was a game tying double. Um and then and this is not one that Max brought up at all, but it really stood out to me, was and I may be standing alone here because I argued with David Lesky and Craig Brown on their newsletters about it.
Boy.
And I had a real problem with pulling Daniel Lynch for John Schreiber in the first Baltimore game. Daniel Lynch was cruising. Yes, he was about to face Taylor Ward, who hits lefties better than righties, but your replacement was John Schreiber, who is better against righties than Lynch, maybe, but has been bad this year, and not just bad
Yes.
results, bad execution. And then even if he does get any, which he did get Taylor Ward, he has to face a lefty. Now, they argued, well, Dylan Beavers doesn't really have splits, but Dylan Beaver doesn't see sidearm righties a lot. And again, John Schreiber is bad, and John Schreiber is significantly worse against lefties. So if Dylan Beavers doesn't have a split, then I'm really concerned about what the pitcher split is. It was gross. We talked about this. I wrote about how loyal should managers be to their owner, or not to their owners, to their players. And I talked about, okay, it made sense to give John Schreiber some chances in high leverage. It doesn't make sense anymore. Guess, and we talked about in the Detroit series, he'd stopped getting those chances, but he started getting them again against New York and Baltimore.
Why? I
I
don't
don't
know
know.
why now.
That's what I don't understand. And I said, well, maybe they won't change the lineup around against Framber Valdez, but they will this week. They haven't. Salvador Perez is still batting cleanup. Vinny Pasquantino is getting warmer, starting to hit the ball better, I think. Saw him hit a couple home runs at the end of Detroit, the beginning of the Yankees, and another one last night or yesterday afternoon, whatever day it was. But he's still batting third. And what you end up, and then for some reason Michael Massey is batting between Carter Jensen and Jack Caglione. How is that a benefit to anybody? It doesn't break up the lefties, but it makes Jack Caglione bat lower and puts a guy who, frankly, until the last couple of days, has been awful at the plate this year. In the middle, it's like, well, Vinny got a hit, great. Well, Salvi made it out. Okay, Carter got a hit. We got 2 hits out of 3, great. Well, now Massey got out. Okay, well, at least here comes Jack. Well, what's Jack gonna do? I don't know. There's 2 outs. It doesn't matter. It's like, why are we breaking up the guys who can hit with guys who can't?
I know. Maybe that's the new split that matters. I couldn't tell you. But the fact, let me focus on the offense first. Okay, let's focus there. I think that right now, and for most of the offseason, we saw a lineup that just lacked thump. It lacked consistent hitting up and down the board, which, it's you got to have consistency in one of them, right? Like, I get it. You can't have a lineup full of singles hitters. You can't have a lineup full of home run hitters, but you got to have some common thread between them. You got to do one thing good. But right now, from top to bottom, it looks like they're surprised by the game every night. Like, they look like they're on their heels, and that exacerbates that pressing issue that you're talking about, Jeremy, because it puts them on, for lack of better terms, defense at the plate, and that's not okay. That is another thing that coaching can address, is you can make sure that your guys are prepared and not flat to start off the games. Because, right now, look,
Go ahead.
again, it just looks like it's such a strong thread that it's not coincidence anymore. And it looks more like it's instruction. Like, it looks like this is the norm right now, and that's not okay.
You raised a point, I think, earlier, and that made me remember that people we've seen people think that Steven Cruz was tipping. There were some thoughts that maybe Lucas Erceg was tipping when he blew his save against the Orioles. You said the hitters aren't prepared for what the pitchers are doing. They're reacting. They're defensive. I feel like another tinfoil hat theory for you. What if the pitchers aren't tipping? What if their tendencies are just so strong that you don't have to tip what pitch you're throwing because they just know they studied up, and that would explain a lot of, well, I can't get you to chase my awesome changeup or my terrific slider because I know it's a slider. I know I'm not going to swing at that. You're going to throw a slider. It's not going to be the strike zone. This doesn't even have to be a lack of preparation. This can also be, and I think some people have talked about this, this can also be an issue of, well, if you can never throw your changeup for a strike, I'm not going to swing at it because if I recognize it's a changeup, I know it's a ball.
Let me go down a rabbit hole on that, Jeremy. Let me go down a rabbit hole on that, because that applies specifically to Michael Wacha, who just had his first bad start of the season, 6 earned runs in 5 1/3 innings. And, most those came in bunches, right? He had like the 2-run home run to start off the game against the Orioles
in the 6th inning.
Yeah, hit a wall. It was like, three bloop hits, a walk, like just the BABIP caught up to him, right? But it's not quite as simple as that, because you talk about tendencies. Okay, Michael Wacha had some pretty strong tendencies through his first 4 starts. Excuse me. He tried to break up those tendencies, and it didn't work. He wasn't landing pitches in the zone consistently, though, and folks weren't offering at the changeup because they were sitting on the curveball.
I'm not sure that Michael Wacha is an example of this necessarily, because his changeup is good enough that even when you know it's coming, he can throw it for strikes, and you're not going to hit it. And all the hits, like you were saying, in that 6th inning were weak hits on pretty good pitches. So I think that was what you said. BABIP caught up to him a little bit. We didn't think he was going to be a 1 ERA guy, even though I do think he's still pitching the best baseball of his life. He's not going to be a 1 ERA guy. If he's a 2.5 ERA guy, I think that's like the top end of who he could be. This is still a very good pitcher. And he was way below that still. So he was going to give up some runs at some point. But I look at the relievers. I look at, when I think of a changeup that's not in the strike zone, I look at Nick Mears. That changeup is filthy, but it's never in the strike zone. I look at Lucas Erceg's slider. It's never in the strike zone. Fastball is usually up. This is especially, I think, true of the relievers. They're really nibbling and or having a hard time getting in the strike zone, and they're not getting swing and miss when they're in the strike zone. And I think that's really punishing them. Seth Lugo does I had this random thought that I threw into the Royals review Slack that I keep wanting to. I've got so many article ideas I can't even write them all, Jacob.
It's a good
but I want to pursue this. I said, what if the Royals pitching coaches are really good with starting pitchers and really bad at relievers, at bullpens, because they've not had a lights out reliever. Well, they've had multiple guys who look like aces for long stretches, where Seth Lugo was second in Cy Young. Cole Reagans looked so good. Chris Bubich looks really good sometimes. Michael Wacha looks really good right now. Noah Cameron looks better than he should be. Even, he struggled some the last couple of starts, but generally he's looked better than he should be. But then you go to the bullpen, and I look at Alex Lang, and I go, you should be better than you are. I look at Steven Cruz, and I go, you should be better than you are. I look at Lucas Erceg, and I go, you should be better than you are.
Yeah.
And so I really, at some point, I need to dig into this, or maybe if Lesky or Craig Brown are looking into it, they'll look into it. Hey guys, do me a solid and look into this. I'm not good at this in-depth stuff necessarily. I mean, I could do it. It just takes me forever and I get bored. And those guys, they do such a great job breaking that
They
stuff
do.
down. That's why I love to
They
read
do.
their newsletters. So yeah, I when I look at the pitching staff, the starting rotation looks so good. The bullpen has a lot of talent. I think this is the most talented bullpen the Royals have had under Matt Quatraro, and
Yeah.
none of them outside Daniel Lynch, oddly, who is the one guy I did not want in the bullpen before the year started. None of them look good. I look at them and I look at their stuff and I look at them on TJ Stats and I go, why aren't you better? And I can't find the answer, Jacob.
Yeah, I can't either because like
And that's
they're
bad coaching.
yes, precisely. The Royals I don't think the Royals are this bad on talent at all. I completely agree with what you're saying, Jeremy, especially when it comes to comparing this bullpen core to what Q has had previously, because that's been always one of the jumping points for Q's detractors is his bullpen management. But at the end of the day, if they're consistently losing on the margins, then coaching has to be a part of the blame, right? Like if they're not being beaten by talent, which I don't think they're being beaten by talent against the White Sox, I would even say versus the Tigers or the Orioles.
Definitely not the current iteration of the Orioles, which is missing multiple stars. And definitely not the White Sox, definitely not the Twins. Maybe they should have swept that series. I think they're at least equal to the Tigers, but they sure as heck didn't look it in that series.
At some point, the repeated fundamental failures become a referendum on the people teaching the fundamentals. That's where I'm at right now. So I think that we could say all this and also not have an answer for, okay, well, who do they replace him with? I don't know. I don't know who you replace him with.
And it may be that the guys they have are good enough. They just need to figure out how to say things differently, or they need to enforce a little bit more discipline. I don't know. I'm not in the clubhouse.
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't know those guys personally. I don't know what how to motivate them. I just know, and I know that the Royals, one of the this was written. I think this was in Max's article that the Royals, Bobby Witt, and a few other guys came up with this whole "be accountable to yourself and others" as part of their mantra for this year. And they don't look like they're being accountable to following the fundamentals of baseball.
No. And if they're not being accountable in the clubhouse, then the staff assuredly is not being holding them accountable.
Yeah.
Or the staff is
Well,
like vice versa, right?
There's multiple levels of failure to get to this point. And it's very concerning. And and then you add in the Salvi drama. That's a failure of communication or something on somebody's end. You need to all be able to be on the same page with that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
you're not.
Folks, no, they're not. Folks, I highly suggest you go and check out Max's article. It is up on RoyalsReview.com. It is called "The Royals Have All the Signs of a Poorly Coached Team," believe it or not. So go and check that out. It came out earlier on this afternoon, April the 23rd, so it should be pretty easy to find. We're going to take our last... Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say real quick, this is a team that under these same coaches has looked exceptionally well coached at times. I don't know what's happening, but they got to fix it.
Yep, that they do. All right, we're going to take our last break of the episode, and we're going to come on back and deliver our reviews.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Stay tuned. All right, welcome on back to the Royals Rundown podcast. So we're done talking about the Royals for a little bit. We're done talking about the stadium stuff. Let's get to some Royals reviews. Jeremy, I would like you to go and start off.
All right, I'm going to review an Atlanta area bookstore called Eagle Eye Books. They had an event recently where Brandon Sanderson, my favorite author, and John Scalzi, my second favorite author, had a conversation. And to get into the event, you didn't just buy a ticket, you bought a signed book. So originally my mom and I were going to go, so I bought a pre-signed Brandon Sanderson book and a pre-signed John Scalzi book. And then I wasn't able to go. Some stuff came up, plans changed, and but my books were there. So I emailed them. I'm like, hey, you are like a ways away from me and I am traveling a lot. Can you ship those books to me? Like, I'll pay the shipping fee. Can you do that? And they're like, oh no, yeah, you don't have to pay. We'll ship it to you. We'll use the address you put in. I'm like, actually, that's my home address and I'm like in and out of there all the time. Can you ship that to my parents and I can get it from them the next time I go there? And I gave them my parents' address. And they're like, absolutely, no problem. And they put it in the mail the next day. That's some really, really, and like leading up to the event, like they had a whole thing going on all day before the authors were there. They had different sales, different opportunities. They told you where the parking was and how that was going to be handled. They shouted out some local restaurants that were within walking distance. We're like, here, show up early, go get you some dinner, and then come to the event. Like they were on top of this thing. And I respect a business that treats their customers as people that you want. Like, one of the driving forces of business back in the good old days that we weren't alive for, but at least in media, one of the driving forces was treat your customers like family, or treat them like your friends, treat them like somebody you want to have around. And Eagle Eye treated people like that. And it was nice. It was nice to not be treated as a nuisance, but as someone for whom you could do a favor, and it wasn't going to be that hard.
Right. Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that you had that experience, Jeremy. I just got a quick review. Ken and I, we needed to go blow some steam off last weekend, and we both love baseball, so we wanted to go to the batting cages. I haven't competitively swung a bat in years. You know, I grew up on an outdoor batting cage there, and I'm blanking on what it's called. It was a park on the edge of Manhattan, Kansas. There, that's why I grew up on. But we found a location near us for this franchise called D-Bat. It's a baseball and softball.
That's facility. Where I go.
Hell yeah! Oh, see, you already know, and it's a nice, simple, straightforward setup. Super easy to get in and out of. They do have locations there in Missouri. I'm seeing ones in Lee Summit, in Liberty. They also have Kansas City and Lawrence and Wichita. We had a blast. It was pretty affordable. Both of us, we did like 5 rounds of batting each. It was like 15 pitches. It was $25. Didn't have to pay for a helmet. Didn't have to pay for a bat. They had everything there on site. Also do a lot of teaching, it looks like. So I suggest checking it out, no matter your age, or if you have someone who's looking to get better, or just someone who wants to go and hit a baseball. We crank that puppy up to 70 miles an hour, which it's closer. It's like 40 feet away, so it's equivalent to 90 to 95 miles an hour according to their math. And we're making some contact, so I think I'm gonna go. Try out, Jeremy. What do you say?
It could hardly be worse than half of the Royals hitters. I'm just saying.
Hell yeah, I'll take that. Alrighty, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of the Royals Rundown podcast. We appreciate you sticking around with us this long. If you want to make sure you never miss another episode or support us, subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to us at. We appreciate all the listeners out there, making us one of the top baseball podcasts in the United States and in the United Kingdom, ? I think it's because we're about the Royals. Go check out royalsreview.com also if you want to keep track of the episodes or just see a lot of great content and join the stellar comment community over there. I am Jacob Milham. They're Jeremy Greco. Thank you for being around. And until next time, go Royals.
I want you to take a deep breath, breathe in and close your eyes. And imagine Jack's flowing locks as he runs across the field to catch a fly ball. And then guns it to the plate and nails the runner.
Yeah!
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.